Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Sleepless Ninja. So, we've gone over numerous ways to customize your Android device. We've taken a look at custom keyboards, we've taken out widgets, wallpapers, rooting, using ROMs, really all different amazing things that you can do to really shape Android to you. One thing that I've not touched upon and something that's really dear to me is actually developing your own apps, developing your own widgets. So, I feel like this is a good time to introduce developing. Today I'm going to show you how to set up your developer environment, and I'm going to basically give step-by-step lessons on how to make Android applications, Android widgets. And I'm going to do it from a perspective of that you know nothing, and we can go side by side, go through, make apps. Sound like fun? Okay, so the hardest part I think is setting up. After that, with a little bit of patience, you'll be right on your way to creating apps. So, when we go to developer.android.com, we want to drop down here, and we just want to go to our tools, and then under tools, we want to go into downloads and then installing the SDK. And this kind of gives you step-by-step guides on how to install the different parts. And I'm going to go through and follow this, but in case you want some context with words, this is a great place to go through each of the different phases that I'm going to introduce. Installing the Android SDK, installing Java development kit on your computer, then installing Eclipse, and then finally pairing the two Android SDK and Eclipse together. So we're going to now go into those parts and step by step guide you to getting your Android development environment all set up. So let's begin. At this website there's a drop-down list right next to the developer's name, and you want to click on that drop-down list, and you can see get the SDK, click right there, and now you're to a page where you can download the SDK for Windows. So when the file is done, you want to run it. It is an executable, and if you have to allow any permissions, just yes the permissions. And here we will begin installing the Android SDK toolkit. Now this is a wizard, so it makes things a little bit easier. And just go next, and then you're going to get to this point where it's going to either say that it detects the Java development kit and it's just going to continue, or it will say it does not exist. So what you're going to want to do is click on that button and go to the website here, and then just download the basic Java JDK. And this is necessary to run the Android SDK. I'm highlighting it on the screen, and this particular file, just make sure that you download the one for your system. So if you have a 64-bit operating system, if you're not sure, just do the x86 on Windows and it will work on either system. And you want to do the same thing. Let's save it, let's download it. When it's finished, run the executable right from the download. Yes to accept the permissions if your computer prompts you. And you're just going to be clicking next through the installer. You do have the choice of choosing installation areas and things like that. Just go with the basic. Unless you are, tech savvy, then you can change the path and all of that. Just because the basic way, it just works. Now if you go in changing the path, sometimes the installer can mess up. And if you don't know how to specify environment variables or paths, or have no idea what I'm talking about, then just don't deal with this. Stick with the basics. Let it install itself. During the install, it will prompt you again. Just continue on through, select all those settings, and you'll be driven to the next part of the installation. There's two things that you have to install. This is the Java FX that comes with the package, and just next through, keep the defaults just like before. When this installs, we want to go back to the Android SDK installer. And here, we're still going to get prompted that we need to install the JDK, to rectify this, all you have to do is press back and then go next again. It will then recognize the JDK, and we will continue on with the installation. You will be prompted to install it for just your user or all users. You might as well just install it for all users in the case that you make a new account or something like that. And then this is very important. We need to specify the path. We want to specify the path under your username. So under your users, C users, your username is where you want to make this path. It makes everything much easier in the end, just like it shows here in the video. Then you also want to do a backslash, just like on the screen, and write in Android-SDK. It actually can be anything, but just make it relate to the Android SDK so you know that is where it's located in your user profile. Then you just next do the rest of the setup and finally install the Android SDK. Now when you finish the install, there's a checkbox that says to start the SDK manager. Uncheck that and click finish. If you didn't and you click finish, it's okay. Just close the SDK manager. We are done with this phase and we're going to move on to now downloading and installing Eclipse. So now we successfully installed the Android SDK and also the JDK. We now want to download Eclipse. So what is Eclipse? Eclipse is kind of the editor. It's the Microsoft Word of the coding for Android. This is where you will be writing your code, and it has some visual interfaces as well as code interfaces, and it kind of provides tools to help making writing the code easier than instead of just writing it in a notepad where you'd have to really just use your own knowledge and write commands to compile and push it to your device and all of that. It kind of smoothens out the process and does a lot of things for you. So what we want to do is you can follow this step also within the installing the SDK guide in Eclipse. We basically want to go to eclipse.org, downloads, and we have a lot of choices here to download Eclipse. Now, you have Windows, if you have Mac, if you have Linux, it doesn't matter. There's a version of Eclipse for you. So just make sure that you are downloading the one that works for you. And I recommend for Android development Eclipse Classic. There are a lot of different versions of Eclipse here, and the one that works the best and is recommended by the development team at Android is Eclipse Classic. And this is what I have been using for 2 or 3 years now. So we're gonna download that version. There's a couple sites that you can download it from. Just pick the main one, and it might take some time, but it'll be done before you know it. And now that Eclipse is done downloading, let's open it up. And let's extract it. And basically what we want to do is copy this to a place where we want it installed. There's no install process. Everything is just you unzip and you can run it. So I'm going to put it just in program files. You can paste it on in here. And right now it's just pasting at the same time unzipping those files to my program files. So this is pretty much the installation process, unzipping the file into a folder where you want it installed. And now we have it successfully installed, and you can see here's our runtime, here's the program itself. And if you want, you can drag this down to your toolbar and have it be an executable or create a shortcut for this application, but this is the run right here. We want to run it. So it's going to ask you for a workspace. I'm going to call mine a little bit something unique. Android workspace. And basically what this is this is where it's going to be storing all of the applications that you are creating. All of your projects are going to be stored and located within this folder. We'll click OK, and it will start creating that space. And then we'll get a welcome to Eclipse. They have tutorials and everything, but don't worry about that. Let's go right to our workbench. So now that we are at this workbench, let's install the portion that binds our Eclipse workbench with the Android SDK. So to do that, we go to Help, and then we want to install new software. And here, we can just follow the text over here on our Eclipse guide. We want to add basically a repository. Now what this does is this allows us to download from the this Android site the necessary tools to have our developer environment in Eclipse. You don't really have to understand this part too much. Just if you follow the steps, everything will be all installed, no problems. So we can just copy and paste. The location, that's the important part, and you can just give it a unique name if you wish. I'm going to call it the Android ADT plugin, for instance. And we'll click OK. And then we're basically going to be presented with a number of options to download for our development kit. We want all of the developer tools. And then we want to click on Next. Now you can see here we have an error. And there's a lot of things where it just can't find certain core packages. So with some versions of Eclipse, especially this new one, Juno, they did not pair this WST package, which is required to install these. So we actually need to go back and add that package itself. So to do that, I'm just going to put in Eclipse plugins, and we're going to manually install the Eclipse plugins as well. And so we need the location. And so every single Eclipse version kind of has a unique name: Helios, Ganymede. In this case, we have Juno. So whatever your IDE's name is, our version's Juno. When you open it up, it kind of says that, if you remember. This is the name that you want to put there. And then you click OK. And now we have this web XML. We want to open this up, and you can see our WST is right there. So let's go back now to our ADT. We'll select the developer tools, and it's actually going to automatically download from the other site the other tools that are necessary. And now we'll install the software. You're going to get an unsigned. You want to authenticate, just click OK. It's perfectly fine. And it's going to ask you to restart. And then it will restart. And like I said before, this is our Juno. That's the version number, just in case you didn't remember. And then we're back in our workbench. It's a little bit different. You can see we have some Android characters now. So now that we have the ADT, we need to just bind our SDK to our Android development environment. So depending on whether you have Mac or Linux or Windows, for Windows you want to click on Window and then Preferences, and that will bring up this Preference tab In Mac, on towards the left of File, there should be an Eclipse. And you click on Eclipse, and then Preferences should be there. And this is all cited on the Android site, so you can use that for reference as well. But it should just be Eclipse. You click on it, and then Preferences should be right there. And then here we have an Android tab. And you can see it automatically found my Android SDK. But in the case that it did not find yours, we installed our SDK. Remember, we put it in our user folder. And then you just select the very top root of the your Android SDK. And you just click OK. And you apply it. And it will ask if you don't have any certain tools that it's requiring. It will prompt you to open the SDK tool manager, and then it will ask you to update your tools. So here's the SDK tool manager that it prompts you to open up, and we do want to install all of the tools. And first we'll just install those tools. You'll see that error. That's normal. Don't worry about it. And so we're all done installing the tools. And what we're going to do is we're going to close the manager down, and just because it asked us to reset, and we will OK this. Now the Android SDK manager is this little Android guy right there. We can open it up again, and you can see that we have a lot more options here. It's still downloading. So we have the tools updated fully, which this is important. And then it gives us basically all these different Android OS versions. So we have the Jelly Bean versions that you can see, Ice Cream Sandwich, and Honeycomb, Gingerbread, Eclipse, Froyo, Donut. So we have the different operating systems right here. And so you can have an SDK for your particular platform, and also there's this extras folder that has a whole bunch of things. If you have a Google device, a Nexus device, you want these drivers, click on that. But besides that, I recommend you download what OS you have for your particular platform. And so Android has an SDK for every single one of their operating systems. So as new features come out, they are included in that version of the SDK. So one thing that's nice about the SDK is you can always have, say, Froyo or Donut or a very old operating system or an app play on the newer. However, you can't have, say, an Ice Cream Sandwich play a Jelly Bean app, because those are newer features that just aren't included there. So that's one thing. You can always go lower, you can't go higher. And with this also comes the emulator that you can run that particular operating system on your computer and emulate some of the actions. So if you want to figure out your operating system, the best way is to go into the settings, and all the way at the bottom is the About Your Phone or your tablet, and there should be a number for the firmware. That firmware is the operating system. If the number doesn't exactly align, just go for the one that's a little bit lower than your number. Okay? I'm going to download the Jelly Bean version because I'm going to work with my Nexus and my Zoom, which has Jelly Bean. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. But if you have a Nexus 7, 4.1 is the way to go. If you have a Zoom and you have Honeycomb, 3.1 or 3.2, depending on which one you have. And any of the other devices, just check accordingly. And you just want to install. You want to accept all of them. And this is going to take some time. So sit back or grab a cup of coffee, install this portion. This is your basically the development kit for your particular operating system, and we'll be back after this is done downloading. So as you can see, we are now done loading the packages, and we have successfully installed the SDK for our OS of choice, and we can close the manager. And now we have all of the tools available to create our own project. So we're going to go to File, New, and then we're just going to go to Project. And then in Project, there's a Android little folder icon, and then we want to do an Android application project. And then we'll just give it a simple name. And we'll leave this for now. Here we can choose our SDK. This is the one that we chose. And we can choose a minimum. We won't worry about that now. So basically all the default is fine. And we're just going to next through. And it's gonna ask us for a dependency. We'll install the dependency. And we'll finish. And we are presented with a lot of information at once. But we have our very first application created, and we're going to stop here. You've successfully set up Eclipse SDK. You set up the Android SDK, and you bound them together, and now you're all set to create Android applications. In the following videos, I'm going to kind of dissect this very first application we created, and then go further and talk about how to create other applications. And we're going to just build our knowledge, and create hopefully really beneficial things that we can use every day to enhance our Android experience. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.